We're taking a look at the latest NHL trade rumors as we approach the NHL trade deadline. We're looking at teams like the Maple Leafs, the Hurricanes, the Blues, the Flyers, the Blue Jackets, and more. Plus, we have news from the NHL Waiver Wire and some injury updates and signings to discuss as well. We'll jump into the latest coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. Now, before we jump into today's video, I just want to quickly acknowledge our channel sponsor, Manscaped. Manscaped has been kind enough to send me a great package of products here. I highly recommend them. A great customer service here as well, awesome to deal with. And they have a special offer for all Top Shelf Hockey viewers. You can get 20% off and free shipping on all orders at manscaped.com. That's 20% off and free shipping at manscaped.com. Now let's jump into today's video and start off with the news from the NHL Waiver Wire. We had three guys go through the waiver wire yesterday. There were no claims. So Martin Frk in Los Angeles, Nick Merkley with the New Jersey Devils, and Richard Panik of the Washington Capitals, all clear, will remain with their existing clubs here. Now, today we have one new player on the waiver wire, and that's Drake Caggiula with the Arizona Coyotes. The signing of Caggiula in Arizona really hasn't worked out. He hasn't played all the time. He spent time in the taxi squad, been a scratch at times, and really has not produced at all. He's on a 1-year expiring contract, league minimum. He will be a UFA at the end of the year, so maybe somebody gives him a chance, but considering all the trade activity we have right now, it's probably unlikely, but I guess you never know. We will see and find out at noon Eastern here tomorrow. Now we have a couple quick signings here to discuss as well. Staying with the Coyotes for a moment, they've signed one of their prospects, Ty Emberson, who's a right-shot defenseman. He was a third-round pick back in the 2018 NHL draft. He's 20 years old and now gets his 3-year entry-level deal. So he's officially on the books here with the Coyotes. And then we had a signing just announced shortly before I started recording this video. The Vancouver Canucks have come to terms on extending Tanner Pearson. So obviously there's one player who's been in the rumor mill about possibly being traded that we can scratch off the list, who's re-signed and staying in Vancouver on a 3-year deal with an average annual value at $3.25 million. He does have a full no trade in year 1. However, it's not a no move clause. So he will not be obligated to be protected in the expansion draft for Seattle. It's only the no move clauses that's a part of here. So he can't be traded without consenting to it, but he could be claimed in expansion. And the other parts of this deal as well, I believe in years 2 and 3, there's a modified no trade with a small number of teams that he can block a trade to. And it's also a backloaded deal, so his salary in year 2 goes up, and then it goes back down in year 3. So obviously helps a little bit with cash flow in year 1, and then it goes up and then back down. And in year 3, there's a $1.5 million signing bonus as part of that as well. That's why the salary is lower. So technically, year 3 is actually more than year 2. It's just the way it's divided up there. So to be honest, I don't like this signing for Vancouver. I'm really confused, and I don't seem to understand the philosophy and principles here behind Jim Benning and the Canucks. They seem to flip-flop a lot, in my opinion, on they're either going young or they're going with more veterans, or what is it? We saw in this past offseason they had a lot of veterans leave via free agency that they could not retain for a variety of reasons, because they had such an expensive bottom 6 full of bad contracts that they're so tight on space that they were trying to move money out. And while they were trying to do that, some of their players got tired of waiting and antsy, and apparently the communication was poor as well, as what we had heard from some of these guys, that they just couldn't wait around anymore. They had to take their contracts and get jobs while they were available. And we saw Chris Tanev go to Calgary. We saw Jacob Markstrom go. Now I think Markstrom would have went anyway because that was just too much money and he wanted the no move clause, but the Canucks just could not do. And they also lost Tyler Toffoli and a few others, but those were the main guys there. And really, we saw how well Toffoli fit in Vancouver, did phenomenal, and then he goes to Montreal this year as a free agent, and he's doing phenomenal there as well. One of the top goal-scoring wingers in the NHL. They rejected a contract for him at $4.25 million, which he ended up signing for in Montreal. They would not do that. I believe he won it 4 years, ended up getting 3. Still, but they give Pearson the 3-year deal at $1 million less, who's already showing signs of decline. He's 29 years old. The Canucks think they're 2 or 3 years away from really contending for a Stanley Cup, which obviously puts him, at near the end of this final year or expiring contract. But they have more guys that are looking for work here that's going to be jumping up into this organization, like Podkolzin, for example. So to me, if their youngsters work out, he's going to get pushed down into the bottom 6. and you're going to have another bottom six player making over $3 million, which makes absolutely no sense. So even though you might be able to start the process in the next year of moving on from some of those other bad bottom six contracts, you just added another one. I mean, this is absolutely ridiculous for the Canucks, in my opinion. I don't think Jim Benning made a wise move here. I think this is a contract they're going to regret as early as next season when they start to see the increased pay in the no trade. And then all of a sudden, he better pick up his game, or this is really going to be another situation that we saw when they signed guys like Roussel and Beagle and Schaller and all those expensive bottom six guys. They still got Eriksson on the books. This team has his fair share of cap issues. They have huge contracts that they're going to have to pony up here for Hughes and Pearson. They get Demko done. I don't mind a Demko deal. Some people thought it was a little much. I'm okay with it given his potential. I think in the middle part of that contract, it has potential to be a bargain. But this just screams that it's going to be bad, and it's going to be bad from the beginning. So I'd love to know what you guys think down below, but personally, not a fan of this contract at all. I don't mind Tanner Pearson as a player. I think he can serve a purpose in that lineup, and if he was willing to stick around on a 1 or 2 year deal for maybe closer to $2 million, maybe. But you just really anchored your bottom six down here again, and you're not going to get out of cap jail anytime soon if you keep handing out deals like this. I know I'm a little harsher on betting today, but don't like this contract at all. And love to know what you think in the comments. Now, let's move on here to some other news. A couple quick injury updates as well, which could impact some trade deadline plans. We have the Winnipeg Jets are going to be without captain Blake Wheeler for an extended time. They're going on a 5-game road trip, and he's not going to be accompanying the team. He took an elbow to the face from Senators winger Brady Tkachuk a few days ago, and they're being addressed here kind of like a concussion. They haven't really fully determined exactly what his injury is, but they're treating it like a concussion, and that very well could end up being what he has. So if that's the injury, you can't really predict exactly how long he's going to be out, but we know he's going to miss the 5-game trip. They'll reevaluate from there, but having one of their top wingers and their captain out for a potential extended time heading down the stretch here, that's tricky to handle here, especially when they're trying to make other moves at the deadline. So we'll see how this impacts Winnipeg. And Boone Jenner is done for the season with the Blue Jackets. That's the second player in a few days here to be announcing that they're done here, along with Riley Nash. So, those are two players that very well could have been traded. I know Jenner had been mentioned in rumors. Not a lot. I'm not sure the likelihood he would have been traded was real high, but there was some talk around it, especially for teams that might want an extra depth centers, good on faceoff, can pitch in a little bit on offense. Like he is the type of player that for the playoffs that would get some interest, but he is done for the season. So another guy to scratch off any potential trade list. Now let's jump into today's latest rumor rundown, and we have start here with the Carolina Hurricanes apparently are trying to move Jake Gardiner. Now, this is not a huge surprise. Of course, that contract they gave him, a 4-year deal back 2 off seasons ago, has not really worked out. Obviously, when he left Toronto, I know he went a long time without getting signed, and obviously a lot of teams were skeptical, I think, of giving him much term, and now we kind of know why. Obviously, a lot of teams kind of saw this coming. His game has really gone downhill. He hasn't found his footing in Carolina at all, so he still has 2 years left, though, and he's been a healthy scratch. He's been on the taxi squad. Like, he's basically become a spare part in Carolina, and obviously if they can move that full contract and get a little extra cap relief here, that would go a long way in helping them with their deadline plan. So I wouldn't be surprised if they talk to a team like Chicago, like San Jose, that are having a bit more cap space, that are willing to take assets on. They might have to retain a bit of that contract, but they might be able to find a way here to throw in a prospect or something else to kind of entice them to do that. We'll see, kind of like what we saw earlier with the Florida Panthers and Chicago Blackhawks trade. We saw the Panthers unload $3.5 million to the Blackhawks in exchange for a couple of prospects. So the Brett Connolly, Henrik Borgstrom, and Riley Stillman all go over to the Blackhawks in exchange for Lucas Wallmark and Lucas Carlson, who had already been cleared through the waivers in the past, so they don't even need to be going through that. They can automatically be assigned to either the AHL or to the taxi squad. So they get $3.5 million off their books. So for giving up some prospects. So maybe we'll see a deal like that. That would really benefit the Hurricanes tremendously as they try to add in other areas ahead of the deadline. I know they were looking to add on the blue line, but they kind of want another defenseman that they feel would fit better and give them a different look. Now, another player getting a lot of attention as well as Flyers forward, Scott Laughton. Now, Laughton can play the wing and he can play center as well. There's lots of teams around getting interest here in this player as he's a pending UFA and very well could be dealt. Now, one of the teams rumored to be interested in him is cross-state rival, the Pittsburgh Penguins. Outside of Pittsburgh, there are other teams reportedly showing interest, like the Colorado Avalanche, to the Bruins to some degree, and the Leafs to some degree. I think the Bruins and Leafs have more irons in the fire here and might fall back on Laughton as like a plan B or C if they don't get a player higher on their wish list here. But obviously a team like Pittsburgh is the one most rumored, which we don't really see those two rivals really trade a whole heck of a lot. It has happened before, but not often. There could have to be a third team involved. I know Elliot Friedman mentioned that on his latest podcast, that if the deal were to happen, that's likely how it would have to be brokered. But we will see here what happens. But Laughton, another interesting name out there that could find himself on the move. We found out earlier today as well that the Columbus Blue Jackets are holding out defenseman David Savard from their game this evening, so he will be a healthy scratch for precautionary reasons, just like we've seen this past week with Kyle Palmieri before he ended up going to the Islanders, and then of course Taylor Hall with the Sabres is in the same predicament, waiting for a deal to materialize. So in the case of David Savard, there's a fair bit of interest out there. I know a team like the Hurricanes, for example, that I just mentioned, looking for a right shot defenseman to give them a different look, could have interest there. I do think one of the main teams that has the space and will obviously be a good fit and some familiarity would be the Panthers with Bill Zito. I've mentioned that numerous times. I still think that Savard to the Panthers is a really high probability. Elliot Friedman seems to think that the Lightning are kind of a stealth team to consider here that would really like to do it, but will have a more challenging time to do it as well, so they may not be able to get it done. And of course, there could be some other teams out there as well, but Savard's getting a lot of interest. Most media outlets have him right at the top or right near the top of the trade bait board, so he's kind of being the right shot experienced defenseman who can play, a playoff style of game. Is somebody getting a ton of interest, so it makes sense that he's such a hot commodity, and I do expect there to be tons of interest. Winnipeg and Carolina, as well as Florida and Tampa, are the most likely landing spots, but you can never count a lot of these teams out. A lot of times negotiations come in last minute with a sweet offer and throws everything for a loop here and leaves other teams scrambling, so we'll have to be seen here. Now, another player, as I mentioned, on the Jackets that was rumored to be on the go is possibly a guy like Jenner or Nash, but of course they're hurt now. Captain Nick Foligno is still a possibility. He was interviewed recently and asked about that proposition that could see him end up getting dealt. And he said that essentially if the Jackets want to approach him about a trade, that they can discuss it and see what happens, but he's not really focusing on it, of course, which is what you'd expect. He's a captain of that team, does appear to have interest. Many NHL reporters and insiders feel that even if he is traded, there'd be a good chance he'd sign back with them in the offseason. He seems to, have good roots there in Columbus, likes it there, likes the organization. So, obviously feels some loyalty there. So we'll see what happens. But Foligno and Savard, you never know. It could even end up possibly being dealt as a combo. You just never know. When you get multiple teams out there that have some really interesting pieces, you could see some deals like that go down. Now, on the front of Taylor Hall, who's arguably, besides Savard, probably the next name getting the most attention, now that Palmieri's off the list, obviously you could argue those two might have been the top anyway. The Islanders were definitely in on Hall, though, from what the reports are indicating, but obviously they like the Devils deal a lot more. We know Lou likes his familiarity with guys, so obviously Palmieri and Sajak are guys he has familiarity with. He's got Andy Green there, you got Corey Schneider there, like he's bringing in a lot of the former ex-Devils that he knows very, very well. So obviously, like I said, the Islanders, they were exploring different opportunities, and that one was the best one for them, but they were in on Hall. So, and now there's obviously still other teams, but what we saw with Florida today, I've seen reports, and some think that the Panthers are in on Hall too. They very well could be working on something significant to be able to handle their the forward spot that they want to add to, and to try to get a defenseman to somewhat replace Aaron Ekblad as best they can. It's not going to be perfect, but, that's why I think a guy like Savard would be a perfect fit there. Or when we're talking about combo trades and getting multiple players from one team, maybe the Sabres move a guy like Hall and a guy like Colin Miller or Ristolainen. I mean, there was reports I've seen back in the past week that the Sabres, when asked about Ristolainen, weren't real keen on moving him. He's one of the pieces that they seem to they'd want to keep along with like Sam Reinhart. But if the offer is right and they get enough interesting pieces coming back, they're expected to consider anything and everything right now because they're such a mess. I think they have to do that. But, there's also Brendan Montour there too. It's not just Miller or Ristolainen. So the Panthers have a variety of options that they're working on. So they're certainly one of the top teams for Hall, but you can't rule out teams like the Maple Leafs. I know the Leafs apparently have been checking in with the Sabres very, very regularly. Dubas has inquired on Hall. It's believed he has interest in Ullmark if they want to move him. We still don't know anything more. We're another day removed without getting a Freddie Anderson update. Jack Campbell's been amazing, 10 wins in a row now, but they certainly need insurance if Anderson can't go, if he's not going to be part of the team in the playoffs. But, all the indications report from Keefe and Dubas that he should be available. So I don't think we're really in a situation where that's likely going to happen. I do think that there's a really good chance that Toronto goes into playoffs with Anderson and Campbell as the duo, but Campbell likely gets the starting role the way things are going right now, but Anderson's still there and might have to wait for an opportunity to play, though, because Campbell's playing so well between the pipes. Now, there's also some reports about some St. Louis Blues unrestricted free agents being available, and I've seen some comments suggesting a potential blockbuster deal between the Maple Leafs and the Blues, which would bring back former Leaf Tyler Bozak. Now, doesn't mean this is going to happen. I don't really have this information from, the inside sources per se. It's just some reports out there. This could be wishful thinking on some people's part, but possibly a Mike Hoffman, Tyler Bozak pickup from St. Louis in exchange for guys like probably a combination of Kerfoot, Engvall, maybe a first-round pick, maybe a prospect. Hard to say which prospect it would be, but some sort of combination of those pieces. Because if you look at Hoffman and Bozak's contracts, they're both pending UFAs. Let's say St. Louis retains 50%, and then you get Kerfoot's contract coming out. Let's say you get Engvall's contract coming out, and you throw some kind of a sweetener in there as well, whether it be your first rounder or a prospect that the Blues like. That's a decent deal that they can do, and they can add 2 forwards there. Now, there's been some talk they might want to add a blue liner as well. We don't know about the goaltending. There's all those X factors at play, and I'm sure that the Maple Leafs have so many conversations on the go right now that they probably have options A, B, C, D, E, F, G all lined up, and they're kind of weighing out their options and seeing what they should do, but it's really not clear what direction they're going to go in here yet, and as each day goes by, it just gets that much more interesting. But the Leafs certainly have options. They apparently have a lot of irons in the fire. They're going to be a very interesting team to watch. And certainly at least a fun thought in some regards. When you get players going back to their old team, it's usually, gets fans riled up and sometimes can be very interesting to talk about. So I'm not convinced right now that we're going to see that. I think they have a lot of other higher priorities on their list right now, like Taylor Hall, for example. Obviously, like I said, they were interested in Palmieri, but they didn't get him. So I think Hall is probably their next best option. But when you're looking at forwards, I don't know. They're probably watching each game, watching Galchenyuk too, and saying, do we need to do this? Are we happy with him? Now they have the situation with Nylander. There's just a lot of stuff that's hard to predict right now. So be interesting to see how they proceed. So let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. What kind of deals are we going to see? There's all kinds of interesting rumors, fun to talk about. And now it's just a matter of waiting to see how they execute. So give me your thoughts in the comments. We'll discuss further. And if you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the latest 2021 NHL trade deadline news and, of course, daily hockey news for the rest of the season as well. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you next time.